What's up, Fearless Gamers? The Wildcard from Fearless Games here, and welcome to Wildcard's Primer, where I'm going to be going over, starting with 40k, we'll see if it branches out anywhere else, one codex per video, and I'll go over the pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses of that army, ideas on collecting that army, if maybe certain kits are better buy than other kits, the playstyle of the army, at least in my opinion, and like the stereotypical playstyle, and if that changes another playstyle you could do, and just my thoughts on playing the army if I were to play them. The whole reason I'm doing this is and staying away from the fluff is because I love the fluff. Don't get me wrong. I think the 40k fluff is very cool, and I know a lot about it. But the whole thought process is you're somebody new to the game, new to the hobby, maybe making a second army, whatever it may be. You're gonna first look at armies that look cool to you. The look is going to be first. It's going to catch you. They're going to catch your eye. You're going to go read up more about them, which involves checking out their fluff. If you like both of that, then you're going to start considering actually playing that army, and that starts making you look at play styles and pros and cons and all that jazz. So that's why I'm doing it this way. And I thought I'd start off with my favorite army, an army that I'm the expert on here, and that would be the Dark Angels. If only that, correlated to actual playing ability, I would be a pretty good player, but it doesn't. Anyways, the Dark Angels are my favorite army, and they're an army I have the most collection of the stuff that I own in 40k. Most of it's Dark Angels. And let's jump right into them. So the Dark Angels are a Space Marine force, and to talk about the Dark Angels, first we got to talk about Space Marines a little bit. Now, I'll do more in the generic Space Marine Codex whenever I talk about that, but really, part of the pros and cons of Dark Angels is, firstly, they're Space Marines. That's both a pro and a con. So some of the benefits of that for being a Space Marine is durability, some of the best armor saves in the business, tactical flexibility, almost unparalleled, and the ability that is both good shooting and in close combat, good on the offense, good on the defense, and they are forgiving. Space Marine armors are very forgiving, as are some other armies, but basically how you measure that scale of forgiveness is what happens if you make a mistake. Because mistakes are going to happen, especially when you're learning that army. And certain armies are so delicate that if you make a mistake in playing them, you pretty much lost the game right there if your opponent capitalizes on that mistake. If they recognize the mistake and they capitalize on it, they can pretty much hose you down. And the Space Marines are an army that's hard to really capitalize on a mistake that they make, because of their durability and everything. So it lets you learn in that same game and actually come out still a winner. And the reason as a con being a Space Marine is that Space Marines are the most, probably, I would say definitely the most widespread army played right now. There's multiple codices for Space Marines, and they have that kind of unique distinction in 40k, that they have multiple codices for Space Marines. So that means you're definitely going to see a Space Marine player somewhere in the hobby shop that you're playing at. And if you're doing a tournament, you're definitely going to most likely play against one. Or at the very least see multiple there if you don't play against one. So everybody knows Space Marines. Even if they don't play them at all, if they never did, they still know about them, know a bit of their capabilities, and therefore know what they're going to do with their armies to kind of counteract Space Marines. So everybody already has a anti-Space Marine tactic in their head, whereas if you're playing a lesser known army, it may not be the case. So on top of that, Dark Angels have their own bit of stuff going on. They have their first company. Now the Space Marines' first companies are always their veterans, and the Dark Angels, they're called the Deathwing, and they only fight in Terminator armor. They never fight in power armor, where some Space Marine first company guys fight in power armor. These guys solely fight in Terminator armor, so they're some of the most elite Terminators in the galaxy. And you have tactical flexibility in their squads, because you can mix and match assault Terminators with shooting Terminators in the same squad, and they're fearless. So you have a very hard-hitting, tactically flexible Terminator squad. Second company is Ravenwing. They're solely on bikes, attack bikes, and land speeders. And they're also fearless. And their color is jet black, where Deathwing, I forgot to mention, is a bone color. So that's why when you see a Space Marine force of Dark Angels, I guess I could have just said Dark Angels there. When you see a Dark Angels force in its entirety, including first and second company, you're going to see bleach bone or bone color, black armor as well, and the green armor together. And the second company are also fearless, and their bikes have the Scout special rule. And a point of interest, they work well with Deathwing, because Deathwing can deep strike near Ravenwing bikes and not scatter. And the Deathwing will also have, in correlation with that, Deathwing Assault. It's like Drop Pod Assault, but for the Deathwing instead, and a bit more tactically flexible. So that's pretty cool. And then third through 10th companies are your Battle and Reserve companies and your Scout company, which are all just the green color. So visually they're a bit more of a striking Space Marine force because they have multiple colors going on. Most other Space Marine forces do not. And a lot of different options in this codex. Now, the pros and cons of the Dark Angels, Deathwing, and Ravenwing is that they're hard-hitting, hard as nails, and a generic con they both share is they're points heavy and small army size. So the smaller the army size, the more acutely aware you are of what you're doing and what casualties you're taking. Even though they can be very durable and forgiving in that regard, they're less forgiving as a smaller army, because everything you do is pretty much magnified, let's say tenfold as an exaggerated example. So if you have a squad that's pretty much out of it, like it's still on the board, but it's so far away it's not doing anything for a turn or two, that hurts you a lot more than a bigger army. Now, one of the cons specific to Ravenwing is that they are very points heavy in comparison to a regular Space Marine biker force. And I shouldn't say very. They're just points heavier, and they don't have attack bike squadrons. Their attack bikes are part of their bike squads. So some people don't like that because attack bikes are very nice to have in their own, but you know, it's up to you really. But either way, you have the option to field a pure Deathwing force, a pure Ravenwing force, or a pure Dark Angel force of Battle Company Reserve, or you can mix and match. So that's a lot of options right there. Now when it comes down to play style, Dark Angels are Space Marines. They're equally good at shooting as it would be in the assault. One thing to keep in mind is the Dark Angels don't have any specific special rules for assaulting. None of their squads have anything like Furious Charge, or none of their special characters give anything like that. The best they get is something with some of their higher end standards. So I personally play them more of a shooting force, and Space Marines are fine to be played as a shooting force. You don't have to be super aggressive up close and personal and assault all the time. You can pretty much shoot them to bits and then assault whatever's left if you have to. So that's how I recommend playing the Dark Angels right now. And their current Codex incarnation, that would be the best way to do them. The Dark Angels Codex, to put it in a little bit of perspective, if you're wondering, if you're looking through the Codex, if you have it, or you're looking at their stat lines for stuff, you may notice that their company masters, which is their captains, don't have the same stat line as Space Marine generic captains, and their librarians and chaplains have a different stat line as well. That's because this codex came out at the end of 4th edition. 5th edition was coming, everybody knew that, and this codex is basically written to be kind of 5th edition compliant. But it was written in 4th edition, and it was written before the current incarnation of the Space Marine Codex came out. So it was basing it all on the stat lines of the 4th edition, if you want to think about it that way, Space Marine Codex. So all the stat lines from there is what were used as a basis for the Dark Angels, before the stat lines were changed. That's why we have the stat lines we have in the Dark Angels Codex. Also, I like to say that now Dark Angels have librarians. They've always had them, but I never really liked them. Ezekiel is probably the best to take in that situation if you want a librarian, but even though the librarians aren't stat line wise in regards to doing psychic abilities as good as other Space Marines still, because the stat line just doesn't have that as high, at least they are still pretty good at it, and they can choose from the 6th ed psychic powers, the generic ones. So that actually gives them flexibility. It gives them capability above and beyond the measly 2 powers a generic librarian would have to work with. So that is nice. You get actual flexibility now with the librarians, and they become, I would say, a lot more useful for Dark Angel players than they were. So I like to call it the fact that we now have librarians. And also, if you're looking through just the codex, you'll notice some of our war gear isn't written like the current incarnation of the war gear in the Space Marine Codex. That's because they didn't used to work that way. The best example would be the Storm Shield. And if you look at the errata FAQ, it shows that all of that war gear is now brought up into compliant standards. It's basically brought up to the current standard of that war gear. So all of our war gear works the same as it would in a generic Space Marine Codex. And that's why it's really important, regardless of what army you're playing or collecting, to keep the errata FAQ in mind. Check it out every so often. Print out the errata FAQ, and if it's different, print out the new copy, obviously, and keep it with your codex. That way, if there's any discrepancy, if somebody looks through my codex and goes, you have, it says here that your storm shields work this way, I can be like, yes, but the errata shows that now works the way it does in every other codex. It just helps any confusion that may arise in the game. And as far as collecting Dark Angels go, they're Space Marines. Any Space Marine kit will work fine. The Dark Angels Veteran Upgrade Sprue, or at least the Dark Angels Upgrade Sprue, which includes the Road Battle Company Veterans models on there, has bits as well as models on there to make a more Dark Angel feeling. And that's pretty cool. Got a lot of cool bits for vehicles, for your walkers, for your Space Marine guys, even some Deathwing bits there. And the Ravenwing have their own bike squad that you can purchase and make them like Ravenwing bikers. When it comes to decals, you really only have what the basic Space Marine decal sheet, which has a little bit of Dark Angel stuff on there, but you don't really get anything for Deathwing. You get a Deathwing symbol you can use from the vehicle sprue, vehicle decal sheet, but if you really want a full-fledged decal sheet, you got to get the Forge World one for Dark Angels. And lastly, the Space Marine Battle Force is always a good bargain for any Space Marine force, regardless of the chapter origin. You can always make use of that Space Marine Battle Force, so it's worth checking out for the Dark Angels as well. And the Dark Angels Ravenwing Battle Force is very good if you plan on fielding Ravenwing. It's just a great bargain. Definitely worth checking it out. And lastly, Dark Angels have successor chapters, and they would also utilize this codex. And they do things pretty much the same way as Dark Angels. Their first company is all Terminators, their second company is bikes and stuff like that. They may call them different, they may not call them Deathwing or Ravenwing, they may not call them anything special at all. It may just be first company, second company. It all depends on the fluff of the successor chapter. And they really don't do the color differentiation. For example, the Angels of Vengeance are all black. That's their color scheme for their armor. That's how it is for first and second company as well. The Knights of Caliban are like a green and black mix, depending on the plating. And it's the same thing for first and second company as well. So really you only have the color differentiation in the Dark Angels themselves. So it's worth checking out their successor chapters. You may like some of the fluff of the successor chapters more than the Dark Angels, and you may like their color scheme better. So always worth checking that out. And that's really it. They're special characters. 2 of them are required to make lists. Belial is required to make Deathwing. Samael is required to make Ravenwing. So if you want to make a pure Deathwing force, you got to take a special character. If you want to make a pure Ravenwing force, you got to take the special character. Other than that, there's not too much else to say about the Dark Angels. They're a cool Space Marine force, worth checking out, especially if you like their look. They got the monastic robe look going on there, which I like. And that's it for this video of the Wildcards primer. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section, or you can PM us here at Fearless Games. And until the next one, take it easy.